Hey everyone, welcome to another podcast of Living a Full Life. We got a great guest this week, John Kammer, from founder of Guardian Angels. This is an AI based journal. Fascinating stuff. I'm going to let him run away with this. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Where did you start? How did you get into this paradigm?
Well, that's a long answer, but ultimately it was an accident. I have probably too much experience in the field, which is kind of what ultimately led me to this. I lost three of my closest friends. The first one 13 years ago to suicide, and then the other two in the last couple of years.
Well,
Um, and that my mo for 12 years was run, hide, bury it down because everyone else has their stuff. I certainly used my fair share of substances to mask what I was actually feeling and avoid doing the real work that healing takes. That really, it's a microcosm for life, right? The good stuff takes work. And that's, I think a lot of us are kind of fed this time heals all wounds fallacy. And so it made sense for me to just try my best to kick the can down the road as far as I could. Um, that led to its own set of issues. But ultimately, what happened was after having a conversation with my wife, I started down a path of trying to build something that would give people a limited measure of comfort from a lost loved one. And it started as, hey, we're going to spoof phone numbers and send you a text message from grandpa or whoever it is on your birthday that just says, hey, I love you. I'm thinking about you. Right. Because who wouldn't smile when they get that text? We all have those numbers still saved in our phone.
mhm.
Um, but what we quickly realized was that number one, while that's not expressly illegal, the telecoms don't look too kindly on it, and it's well within their rights to block that behavior. Why? Because, well, we all get about 10 spam calls a day at this point, and that's what most people are doing when they spam a phone number. They
Right.
weren't going to give little old me a pass on that. So, the next hurdle was pretty clearly, well, if this resonates with people, they're going to want to interact with it. And what do we do in that scenario? Because it has to feel authentic. If it doesn't feel authentic, then there's no point. And it was pretty clearly AI, but in order to scale it. But how do you make that feel comforting? How do you not make it feel like a robot on the other end that is cold and yes and no and black and white, right? And to do that, I sorry. In order to build something like that, I had really only my own personal experience to lean back on. So I built the first iteration. I trained the first one of these in the image of my best man at my wedding, who I'm passed in on New Year's Eve of 2023. Um, and that one held a lot of guilt for me. I was not able to say a lot of things to him. He did this thing for me, stood up on my wedding day, the happiest day of my life, and told some stories about the good times and the times that I wished he wouldn't have repeated, and everything in between. And I fully anticipated doing the same for him, and I didn't get to. And frankly, I spoke to him once in the 7 months between my wedding and the day that he died. So for him to do that for me and for me to not find it important enough, obviously that's not a fair characterization, but as life gets in the way of little things, but that's how I felt. And that weighed heavily. So I used him as this, the guinea pig for this. And when I built it, I was able to say things that I wasn't able to say while he was alive. I was able to apologize. I was able to, ask him about the accident. And while I tried similar things in therapy, the empty chair technique and writing the letter, right, which are fairly common in grief therapy, they never had I never got a response. And in this case, the response that he gave me was what triggered the release, triggered the tears. I hadn't shed a tear in 3 years. I didn't think I was capable anymore. I was just a shell. I'd shut down. And so almost instantaneously, the weight was lifted. And that's not to say that, I was healed in that moment, but it put me in a place where I was curious. I was ready to do the work. I was ready to face it. I had permission finally to forgive myself, which was the first, that's the prerequisite, right? Like that has to happen if you're gonna move forward. Um, so in feeling that release, I thought almost instantaneously that there's something here. If this helped me in this way, this can help somebody else. Now, is that 3 people? Is that 1 million people? I don't know. But if it helps one person, then it's a screaming success in my mind. So off we set on trying to bring this thing to market. We've iterated a few times. It really started as kind of a nebulous, like, talk to your lost loved one and work things out. There's a few problems with that. It started with the best of intentions, but you do kind of tiptoe up to that line of what's delusion and what's not. The Black Mirror, not fallacy, but the Black Mirror kind of dystopian, like trying to talk to the dead and necromancy and all of the stuff that that goes along with that. I was getting messages saying this is the devil's work, and on one hand, that for a religious person, that may be 100% true. But that wasn't what we were going for. So it was great feedback to get early on, and really cause us to think about how we wanted to do this. Because at the end of the day, if this isn't helping people, then it stops. The moment that it hurts more than it helps, it stops. I fully believe there's more good to be had here than bad, but it needs to be developed responsibly. And there needs to be guardrails, and there needs to be that foundation in therapy. Now, we've worked with licensed therapists to build out the framework for how it operates. I have taken these steps to make sure that we are not doing things that are going to hurt people. And I believe that there is a space for a business here. Just that, profit may not be the overriding motive. It's a nice benefit to a well-reasoned and executed plan to help people. So in its current iteration, we have developed a series of structured journal prompts that follow Warden's 4 tasks of mourning, which is a tried and true therapeutic framework for addressing loss. So you build the persona, which is the object of your grief. That's form-based, it's user-centric, it's what is your relationship, or what was your relationship with this person. Not mine, not social media's, none of that. It's what are your memories? How do you feel about them? How would you describe them? Because frankly, the rest of the world doesn't matter for that relationship. And that then becomes your guide for navigating this labyrinth of emotions and feelings, and how do we get to a productive place and get our, regain our humanity after one of the worst experiences that we can have in this life, right? Losing someone close to us. So you get prompted at different, your desired interval. We have packages from 3 times a week to 5 times a week to every day, depending on how deep you want to get and how intensive you want to attack this thing. And your grief guide, your persona prompts you with these, and you get immediate feedback. So here's your journal prompt. It says it in the words of the person that you're talking to. It's tailored. And then when you respond, they respond back to you. So you can have those conversations, that feedback that helps you organize your thoughts to the point where all of a sudden you can kind of name what you're feeling, and you're in this place where, okay, I'm starting to understand how I'm feeling and why, so I can do something about it. Because that's the first step.
Yeah.
For so long, I was just sitting there like, I don't know what to do. There was no starting place. There was no roadmap. I subscribed to I'm just going to sit here and wait. And time doesn't heal anything. It just lets you hide.
True.
Uh, so
So, so this is a conversational AI bot that's been trained by you using psychology in mourning, and the responses are computed, of course, by the conversational bot as it learns. And I'm sure it's only getting better. The more that people use this, the more that you get responses from them. You're probably getting better results with all of them as well. Uh, Now, I can see where people may look at this and be like, that's not cool. But from a psychological perspective, I mean, this tool is not, there's nothing like it out there. I mean, you can go to therapy, you can go to grief counseling, you can go to all of the mental health options that are out there, which are great. But you're never going to get a response back that's in the tone of a conversation with your inner self. Honestly, let's be honest, it's never going to be with the person that's gone,
right.
but with your inner self. And that's interesting. Let's just talk about the good and the light in this first. That's really interesting, and that is a very, very useful tool. We can talk about how this can get out of hand later at
Yeah.
the end, but
Well,
so that I was just trying to understand it, but maybe you can finish what I missed there on the AI portion on this, on the conversational portion on this. Many people don't realize that we've been using AI for over a decade. Siri is AI on your phone. Alexa is AI on your phone. When you tell it to do something, it's giving you the response in what it thinks is going to be the best answer for you that you've trained it to do. So we've been using this forever. GPS, Google Maps, it's all there. So we don't have to be scared of it. And now what we're doing on the back end with the tools that we have in AI is we can actually train it. We can actually build these conversational bots to give FAQ questions and answers that are, tailored, groomed, protected, good answers that don't get out of hand. And I'm sure you'll get into that, but maybe you can dive a little bit deeper into the build of that. That way we can move forward with this conversation with a little more clarity, because people are already, I was just listening to you, I'm like already thinking of all the horrible things that could happen with this, but let's keep the light in here. And did I get most of that? Is that how you built it?
um, kind of. So
Yeah.
you bring up a couple of points that I wanted to hit on before I kind of move into that. So number one, we built this specifically to be a complement to therapy, not to replace therapy, not to, this is
That's a
one
good point.
tool in the broader tool belt.
Yeah.
So we're not coming for anyone's job. We're trying to build the thing that fills in the gaps, right? So you can't call your therapist at 3 a.m. when
No.
grief tends to bite us, right? If you've lost someone, you have sat there and stared at the ceiling more than likely and been like, damn, now would be a good time to talk, right? And then we have functionality in here that allows you to export it, take it into so that you have a starting point with your traditional therapist, right? So that's number one. Is it's very intentionally designed to be that tool. I think the next thing that we hit on was the how we're building it. So in its current form, it rides on top of the ChatGPT backbone, and it is roughly 30. It's basically a form-based super prompt. So while right now we're in the process of implementing an agentic framework where it'll learn and train itself more fine-tuned, but we're not there yet. So you fill in the answers sorry, to the questions, which are everything from what was your relationship with the person? How did you refer to each other, whether nicknames, so it familiarizes it. How would you describe their humor, their speech? There's even, if you don't know how to describe those things, we have little prompts that will help you come up with the right words so that you can refine it. Share a few, shared memories, shared interests. When did you first meet? So it gives it the context to respond to you in the way that you desire. And I think you brought up another really good point there, which was we're having a conversation with ourselves, right? What AI does, what social media does, and they're demonized for it, but they just reflect you. When people talk about the algorithm and on Facebook or Instagram, it's just giving you stuff that you want. Whether you want to admit that you want those things or not, you are consuming the things that have triggered it to put those in your feed.
Very true.
And with AI, it is still a computer. So there is very much its outputs can only be as good as its inputs. And so, when people get these horrifying scenarios that arise from AI, what it is, to your point, it's been around forever. Neural networks were developed in the 40s.
Mm.
Now, I listened to a podcast with Stephen Wolfram the other day, and this stuff has been around forever. What AI is statistical probability of what the next word is. Now we just have the infrastructure to process billions and trillions of data points as opposed to hundreds or thousands. So it's much more exact in what is the word that typically follows this word in context of the 40 words that were in front of it. But that's what it is. So it's not thinking, it's not coming up with, it's not making things up in the way that people have this boogeyman in their head.
No, it's not a brain. It doesn't
Right.
work like a human brain. Yeah.
Right. So those are the things that came to mind as you were talking. Is yes, we fully intend to implement more robust agentic frameworks so that this thing can train itself. But there is one of the kind of ethical questions that has come up, which there's been a lot in navigating such a sensitive space, if you will, is we don't necessarily want to make this seem so lifelike that we are potentially deluding people into thinking they're talking to their deceased loved one.
There we go.
There's the voice, right? And then there's even avatars. And maybe in the future we go there. This is specifically stayed chat, and it's not really, I've kind of gone away from implementing those things intentionally because that's that slippery slope where we get into more harm than good.
Right. And like you said, you're developing the back end. So you're not creating any prompts to make this AI think about what emotional answer to give next. It's not going to be like, it's never going to give a response of like, I wish we had that time to go to Europe together. That will never be an answer that comes from the AI to make you feel worse about,
Right.
the potential of something that was sitting in your mind that you fed through the questions. That's how you say these things are going to get better. So no, I'm a fan. I definitely am. Or otherwise, I wouldn't have you on the show. I'd be one of those super conservative. But no, I'm a fan. I see the tool, and I love helping people. And this is only going to help people if you use it. So, no, this is great. Keep going. This is amazing stuff.
Yeah. Well, something else you got out there was the idea of it's never going to come up with something just out of the blue. A lot of what therapy is asking the right question. The answers are in here. We have them already, right? And so a good therapist, oftentimes, in an hour long session, what do they speak for 5 minutes? And they just kind of they ask the question and shut up. And then how many times in that hour do you go, huh? You know, I can't tell you how many times I just simply need to say something out loud, whether it's to the wall or something else. And I go, wow, that's not what I meant, or that's not how I felt, or that's not, it just needed to come out. And so we're giving people a safe space to start that conversation with themselves and get comfortable with sharing, even though this is in a virtual environment and there's no, the other side is a computer right now, as you start to flex that muscle more, you become more comfortable with doing it with people, which is ultimately what I have learned in the last year and a half after running for a decade. That's where the healing lives. This is just a mechanism to get you there. And that mechanism can act in different ways. For some people, it's really about flexing that muscle. Some people, it's about thought organization. Some people, it's just about, starting to actually accept and process the loss, which is what Warden's 4 tasks are. It starts with accepting the loss and then walks you all the way through. Where this really shines is Warden's fourth task is something to the effect of, I don't quote it, but defining what this relationship looks like going forward. Because what we know is, while the physical being may not be here anymore, the relationship does not die. And so how do you carry them with you in a way that allows you to live a fulfilled life, but doesn't have you forgetting? I think that is one of the major, major impediments to people being ready to do the work, as it were, is their fear and their desire not to forget this person that was so important in their life, right? If they could be assured that moving forward, instead of moving on, I don't like that terminology, but moving forward doesn't mean that this person is no longer there, that you have to forget about them, that it's just the relationship is dead as well. And so that realization and that validation and that, okay, we're going to hold your hand through this, is powerful.
Yes, it is. This is fantastic. Good work. When did you start this? 2023?
No, I technically launched this in May of this year.
Oh, great.
Now, I would say realistically, I launched this in August of this year. And then really in beginning of December is when we made that switch to the journal, the nice. Framework of structure and how do we give people, more, a better place to start.
So how does it work? Let's go through this. So somebody listened, they're like, you know what, this is great. How do we go to guardianangels.ai?
Yep.
And how do we get started there?
Well, there's the landing page that kind of walks you through what we are, how we do it, use cases, and there's 45 call to action buttons that just say start now. Start your first conversation, build your first persona. Right? There's a 7-day
free trial. Answer the questions. So
Yep.
The experience is you go in there, you answer the questions. As you're answering these questions, it's building the prompt and the profile on the back end. Correct. For the is it conversational AI bot? Is that what it is?
Yep.
Good. For the AI bot to do its thing. And then what does that experience look like once it's all set up? How does that feel, or what do we do once we're in there?
So one thing before we go there, the building of the bot, going through these questions, that can be a significant emotional lift. So if people go in there, I would say, unless this is a loss that you've already had some, done some good work in accepting, and that might take you 3 days. That might take you, because that's a trip down memory lane that's going deep already. And so I wouldn't expect, if you were to just fly through them, it's going to take you 15 to 30 minutes to answer those questions, which is fine. You can always change them. You can always refine them. You can always make them more specific. The answer is more specific later. But the more specific you are, the better the responses are going to be, right? This is the garbage in, garbage out, or outputs are only as good as their inputs thing, right?
Yeah.
So once you get through it, you say start chatting. You will be prompted at that point with something to the effect of, do you want to journal today, or do you just want, or are you not feeling the journaling? And you can either journal, at which point it will prompt you with your first prompt. You'll respond. It automatically exports that into a journal that is saved, that you can review, that you can export, that you can print, that you can take to therapy. And then you get that feedback and you can have that conversation, right? So, one question might be, what is one place you've avoided since I've been gone?
Hmm.
Right? So you respond to that. I don't go to the museum anymore because that was where we had our first date, whatever, right? And then it's going to respond to that. And so it's not just this one-way street of journaling. You get to kind of work this stuff out, and it's designed as, it's your lost loved one combined with a grief therapist. So it's designed to ask questions. It's not designed to give answers, if that makes sense.
It does. It
So
does. Yeah, it's interactive. I like that. That's a great way to describe it. It's an interactive journaling, because maybe people are thinking the other end of the spectrum here. They're like, well, what's the difference between me just opening up a book and writing what I feel or what I think? It's the interaction. There's a
it's going to
response.
prompt you to go deeper on each
Deeper.
of those,
Yeah.
which is ultimately what's going to get you to the point where you have accepted, you've embraced, you've come to terms with what life looks like as you move forward. And that's what
Yeah,
we're trying to do.
no, it's great. You're onto something. This is great. I hope we can support you in every way possible. Do we? How do you feel about that? Does that cover the? Does this give it justice, or what else do you want to add to this? But you've answered all my questions. That's why I asked that question at the end. I'm like, what? It makes sense.
I think we've covered, the product, right?
Yeah, how it
How
works.
does this thing work, and why would I use it?
Hmm.
I guess one thing that has kind of has come up throughout the process of building this and understanding more about grief and what it looks, we I built this specifically for loss of a loved one, right? Grief regarding death. We grieve a hell of a lot more often than the loss of a person close to us. So, whether it is a relationship that ends, you lost your job, you, um, you haven't, there's this thing called ambiguous grief, right? So you have
Hmm.
a family member, a friend who's now an addict, and they're not dead, but they're not the same person they were. There's anticipatory grief, where you've got someone who is, in long-term hospice care, where you're kind of counting the days, and they're not gone yet, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
There's all, you mourn, or there's grief around when you get married and you don't have your bachelor life anymore, right? You're not out with the boys all the time.
That's a good point too. Kids leave the nest.
Right.
Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, you're right. Never thought
So
about that.
so I left enough flexibility in the prompt, or in the form, to account for those relationship ones, right?
Hmm.
So there's a question in there that says, am I living or deceased? Why is that? That's so that if you have one of those, I have a friend from high school whose brother had a mental break. He hasn't seen him for 10 years. He's not dead, but you know, I, who knows? So there's enough flexibility in there, and that's the beauty of AI and in its flexible nature, that you can address some of those things. We specifically built it narrowly because if I was to try to boil the ocean on day one, the bottom falls out of this thing and it doesn't help anybody. So if we can realize some of the scale that I think is possible here, realize some of the benefit, and get people on board to a point where it makes sense to go raise, it makes sense to hire a full team, it makes sense to, to do the whole thing, then I fully believe we tackle each one of those use cases in much more detail. So
Agreed. Agreed.
that is, that's just the context piece there.
Yeah. And you come from, you're doing this as a mission. It's your vision, it's your mission. It's coming from a place of, truly wanting to help people because you've helped yourself, on this journey, and it never really ends. So I always stand behind you. I love this. I love this idea. It's only going to get better, which is cool. You're at the, you're using this, you're implementing this. It's a tool that's only going to get better. So Yeah, if any listeners are out there and you know someone that's, grieving, maybe you just pop them a quick email with the link, guardianangels.ai, and say, hey, check this out. Because you do a great job on the landing page describing what this is all about and what to expect from it. So it's pretty straightforward, comes from a great place. Good job, John. I think you're off to something really cool, man.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
very much. And if there's anyone listening in the, in the mental health space that has input, this isn't about me anymore. You're not going to catch ego from me. It's already done what it needed to do for me to set me off on my journey. But if you have a use case, I spoke to a counselor yesterday who, is thinking of people and different things that he thinks that this could be good for. Reach out to me. I think there's an email linked on the site, but on my socials, there's ways to get a hold of me, John at guardianangels.ai. I would love more, more input. I would love to work with people to build this responsibly. One of the, I'll kind of say this, one of the major critiques that I get, especially, from very conservative people, typically with a religious background, but not always, is that AI is too powerful. It has the potential to, replace God, right? I'm a religious person. That is not how we intend this. But I would say, and what I do say to that is, if we believe that AI is coming, and I do, that this train has left the station, would it not be incumbent on us? If not, I would argue a moral imperative to try to do this in the most responsible way that we can, to
absolutely.
get as much good out of it as we can,
Hmm.
instead of just running away with plugging our ears and resigning ourselves to whatever dystopian fate you have in your head.
Absolutely. This is what, if they had podcasts back with Edison and electricity was coming out, trust me, that was the root of all evil was electricity, and then the railroad system, and then
Well,
computers.
yeah, I
And
believe the word
we're
demonized
just,
came from electricity, like, or at least in its common in its current context.
yes. And I'm pretty sure we use electricity for good up till to this day, but there are people that use it for bad too, like a whole bunch of mining and black, what's it called? The black web or whatever.
There's always a downside, and there's
There's
always a
always people going to use any tool to their advantage in a negative way that's considered evil people. And you said one thing, replace God. If you're truly rooted in your faith, it's impossible. You can't.
exactly.
You can't replace God. So yeah, no, you're right. I think being knowledgeable decreases fear first of all, and I
Right.
think people are fearful because they don't want the knowledge. They don't want to know anything about it, or they just want to stay scared about it. So the more you know, it's just like with your kids when they're scared about the monsters under the bed, when they're scared about the things, and you take some time to give them a little bit of knowledge or insight, the fears go away. Why? Not because there's no monsters under the bed, but because now they know that the probability of that is pretty much zero. So
Well,
that's this
understanding,
too.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
understanding
right.
and knowledge, that we fear what we don't understand.
We fear what we just don't understand, and AI is not replacing anything. As a neuroscience background and a functional neurology and chiropractic, the brain, no one's replacing the brain. The brain is its
It's
own mechanism, and you describe this as a neural complex, which is the rest of our body. We have nucleus, we have hubs of nuclei all through our body to help the brain communicate faster, and that's what AI is just hubs. They have no brain. They'll never be able to have a mind of its own until garbage in, garbage out. It's going to be garbage most of the time. It's never going to be able to figure it out. It's just going to be a better and better tool in every aspect that we use it. So I love that you've used this energy and put it towards this aspect. It's a very, very cool tool. And I think it's all good.
awesome. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. Maybe we'll have you back once we get 2.0 out because I know there's going to be a 2.0, a 3.0. It's only going to get better and better and better. So that's great.
Well, I can tell you this: I'm not stopping.
Awesome. No,
So
it doesn't sound
whatever
like it.
my
You can usually
limitations
tell.
are,
I can,
hopefully I can bring on some smarter people than I,
yeah,
to help push this thing even further. That's always the goal, right? I wanted to create a room where somehow I'm the dumbest person in the room. That sounds awesome.
that's the best place to be because then it's only up from there. That's awesome. Good stuff. Keep going.
Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah. Take care.